All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep into The Legend of Ochi, this new fantasy adventure film everyone's talking about. We've got a movie web review to guide us through it, so just picture this. Remote island in the Black Sea, early 1980s vibes, and we've got mythical creatures running around. It's got that classic children's story feel, but from what I hear, some really impressive effects too. Have you seen any trailers for this one?
I haven't actually caught the trailers yet,
Hmm.
but that review I read, it really hammers home the visuals. Like the director, Isaiah Saxon, he uses all these tilted camera angles. You constantly feel off balance, like you're hiking right there with the characters through this rugged landscape.
Okay, so that sense of unease, it makes you wonder if that's intentional, right? Like to mirror that feeling of heading into the unknown, especially
Hmm.
because we're dealing with these mysterious Ochi creatures. Are they dangerous
Oh.
or just misunderstood seems to be the big question.
Yeah, and the film does a great job of keeping you guessing. You hear whispers, stories about the Ochi, even catch glimpses, but no full reveal until later on.
Yeah.
Really builds the suspense. And picture this, a creature that's like a gremlin mixed with a monkey, but with a dash of cuteness thrown in. What I find fascinating is they don't have magical powers or anything. They're intelligent animals, which makes it feel more real, even within the fantasy.
Intelligent animals, huh? So not talking animals, but more like, I don't know, wolves, maybe. Creatures with their own social structures and all that.
Exactly. And how they interact with the humans is a big part of the story. Speaking of the humans, we got to talk about Yuri, played by Helena Zengel. She's this death metal-loving teenager, super skeptical of her father's obsession with hunting the Ochi.
Oh, yeah. I saw her in System Crasher. She's incredible. So she's kind of the voice of reason then, the one questioning everything. Can already see how that'd make things interesting.
Absolutely. Her father, Maxim, played by Willem Dafoe, he's convinced the Ochi are evil, need to be wiped out. So you have that clash, the skeptical teen versus the fear-driven dad, fuels a lot of the drama. And then there's Yuri's adoptive brother, Petro, played by Wolfhard. He sides with their father, so another layer to the family dynamics there.
Okay, so remote island, mysterious Ochi, and this family divided over how to deal with them. Sounds like a lot going on beneath the surface. Makes you wonder, could this whole Ochi or evil thing be a metaphor for something bigger, like fear of the unknown in general?
That's a really interesting point. And setting it in the early 1980s adds to that.
Yeah.
Cold War was still raging, constant suspicion, fear of the other. Maybe the Ochi represent any group that gets demonized based on prejudice and misinformation.
Wow, yeah, that's a pretty thought-provoking connection. Makes you wonder if the director's intentionally drawing parallels there between the villagers and real-world conflicts. Makes me think about all the times fear's been used to control people.
Right. And it makes you think about how we as individuals react to the unknown. Do we approach it with curiosity, open-mindedness, like Yuri? Or does fear call the shots?
That's a great question, and one I'm sure we'll get into as we keep going with this deep dive. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's talk about the visual side of things. That review, it raved about the creature effects, especially when Yuri's interacting with a baby Ochi.
The way they brought those creatures to life is seriously impressive. Mix of puppetry, animatronics, CGI. Like when you encounter a wild animal, a lion cub, adorable but potentially dangerous.
So they've made these creatures a little scary, but they did it in a way that feels real, not over-the-top magical.
Exactly. Not cuddly cartoon characters. Creatures with their own agency, potential for both good and bad.
This is making me really want to see how they balance that wonder with the potential for conflict. I'm guessing things get pretty intense at some point.
Oh, I'm sure they will. But before we jump into all the plot twists and turns, let's take a closer look at some of the film's themes and symbolism. There's a lot to unpack there. And I think it'll shed even more light on what the director's trying to say about fear, prejudice, our relationship with the unknown.
Okay, that sounds great. Let's dive into those themes, see what we can uncover. What stands out to you as the most intriguing part so far?
For me, is how they use the Ochi to explore this idea of otherness. They're not just creatures, they represent anything we see as different, and therefore potentially threatening.
That's a great point. Makes me think about how easily fear of the unknown can turn into prejudice and discrimination. It's like the villagers are just projecting their anxieties onto the Ochi without really trying to understand them.
Exactly. And Yuri's the one who challenges that. She sees the Ochi not as monsters, but as individuals, each with their own personality and intelligence. She's willing to learn from them, to connect on a deeper level.
It's like that quote, "We fear what we don't understand." Do you think the film's encouraging us to be more like Yuri? To approach the unfamiliar with curiosity, not fear?
Absolutely. It's a powerful message, especially these days. We're constantly bombarded with information.
Yeah.
So quick to judge based on, limited knowledge.
The film also touches on the influence of family and tradition. Like, you see how Yuri's father, Maxim, is caught up in these deep-seated beliefs about the Ochi, almost like it's been passed down for generations.
That's important to point out. It highlights how cultural narratives, family dynamics, they shape how we see the world. Maxim's fear of the Ochi isn't just his own, it's something he inherited, and now he feels obligated to uphold.
Almost like he's trapped by those beliefs, unable to see things differently. Makes me wonder about Yuri's mother, who we meet later in the film. What's her role in all of this?
Well, the review mentions that Yuri's mother had a different view of the Ochi, more open-minded, willing to see the world differently. Seems like Yuri inherited that from her, that sense of empathy and curiosity.
So even within this community that's gripped by fear, there's this alternative viewpoint represented by Yuri and her mother. Like, they're carrying the torch for understanding and compassion.
Exactly, and that makes their struggle even more compelling. They're not just fighting against the Ochi, but against an entire worldview, a way of life that's been passed down for generations.
It makes this film so powerful, not just a fantasy adventure, but a story about challenging the status quo, about breaking free from fear and prejudice.
Even when facing these huge obstacles, Yuri's courage and determination inspire us to question our own assumptions and to fight for what we believe in, even if it's not popular.
Speaking of inspiring characters, let's talk about the performances. We already mentioned Helena Zengel's talent, but what about the rest of the cast? What did you think of Willem Dafoe as Maxim?
He's brilliant, as always. Brings this intensity and gravitas to the role. But you also see these glimpses of vulnerability. A man torn between loving his kids and this deep-seated fear of the Ochi.
Yeah, I can see that complexity coming through. And what about Finn Wolfhard as Petro? He's got a lot to work with there, playing a character caught between loyalty to his father and his growing affection for Yuri.
He does a fantastic job conveying those conflicting emotions. You can see him wrestling with his beliefs, trying to reconcile his father's teachings with what he's experiencing firsthand.
So it's not just humans versus creatures,
Yeah.
but a clash of ideologies within a family, within a community.
Exactly. Those internal conflicts mirror the film's bigger themes, the struggle between fear and understanding, tradition and progress.
Sounds like the film's layering these different levels of conflict to create a really rich and nuanced story. And all of this set against these stunning visuals and creature effects, a truly immersive experience.
The combination of artistry and storytelling is what makes it so captivating. It's not just escapism, it's engaging with complex ideas and emotions, challenging our perceptions.
Okay, so we've covered themes, characters, visuals, but I'm still curious about the Oki themselves. We know they're intelligent animals, not magical. But what about their behavior? How do they interact with each other, with their environment?
That's where the film's commitment to realism really shines. The Ochi aren't just monsters, they're fully realized creatures. They have their own social structures, their own ways of communicating. Think of them like wolves or primates, each with their roles and hierarchies within the pack.
So they're not just reacting to the humans, they have their own internal dynamics, their own motivations.
Precisely. That's what makes them so fascinating to watch. They're not simply good or bad. They're complex beings navigating a world that's beautiful and dangerous, just like the human characters.
This makes me appreciate how much thought went into creating these creatures. It's not just about making them look cool, it's about giving them authenticity, a place in the island's ecosystem.
And that attention to detail extends to the production design, too. The review mentioned how carefully they recreated the early 1980s setting. From the clothes to the vehicles, the architecture, it all adds to this feeling of being transported.
Sounds like they went all out to create a world that feels real, lived in, which makes the story even more powerful.
Exactly. And that immersive quality lets the audience connect with the characters and their struggles. It's not just a fantasy, it's a reflection of our world. Our fears, prejudices, our potential for both compassion and destruction.
This deep dive is revealing so many layers of meaning in what, on the surface, seems like a simple fantasy. It's clear The Legend of Ochi has a lot to say about our relationship with the unknown, the dangers of prejudice, the importance of choosing understanding over fear.
And it does so in a way that's entertaining and thought-provoking. It's a film that sticks with you, makes you examine your own beliefs and biases.
Before we wrap up our analysis, I'm curious about your thoughts on the manipulation and fear-mongering in the film. We talked about how Maxim embodies this fear of the Ochi, but is there a bigger commentary there about how fear can be used as a tool of control?
That's an excellent question. I think the film definitely touches upon that. Think about how Maxim uses his fear to justify what he does, even putting his own kids in danger. He's so convinced he's right that he's protecting his family. that he becomes blind to any other viewpoint.
And that blindness is what ultimately leads to conflict and suffering. It's a cautionary tale about letting fear make our decisions for us, especially when it's amplified by people in power.
Exactly. It makes you think about how fear is used to divide people, to create an us versus them mentality. That benefits those in control. And it challenges us to be more critical, to question the narratives we're given, to seek out alternative perspectives.
This conversation is really making me think about how we can all be more mindful of that, how fear and prejudice work in our own lives and in the world. It's a challenge to be more like Yuri, to approach the unknown with curiosity and empathy, even when it's hard.
That's the heart of the film's message, I think. And it resonates deeply today. It's a call to be more compassionate, more understanding, more courageous in the face of fear and ignorance.
I love how this deep dive is revealing all these layers of meaning. It's a testament to the power of storytelling, not just to entertain, but to inspire and challenge how we see the world. But before we get too carried away, let's take a moment to appreciate the artistry involved. The review raved about the creature effects, and we've talked about the performances and production design.
It's a true collaboration of talent. From the director to the actors, the visual effects artists, they all came together to create this immersive, unforgettable experience.
And it sounds like they did it with a level of care and detail that's rare these days. It's not just about spectacle, it's about crafting a world that feels real. Characters who feel authentic, dealing with issues that resonate with us.
Exactly. And that's what makes The Legend of Ochi more than just a genre film. It's art that speaks to our shared humanity, our capacity for good and evil, our potential for growth and transformation.
This deep dive is making me even more eager to see it, to experience the full impact of the story and the visuals. But before we get too carried away with our own excitement, let's talk about one of the few criticisms from the review, the pacing.
Yeah, the reviewer did mention that. They called it the Lord of the Rings syndrome. Some scenes feel a little too drawn out, particularly when the characters are traveling across the island.
Ah, interesting. Makes you wonder if those slower moments have a purpose, maybe to develop the characters or build atmosphere.
That's a good point. It's possible those scenes, even though they're slow, contribute to the overall mood. They might make the isolation and mystery feel stronger, emphasize the vast landscape and the challenges the characters face.
So some viewers might find them a bit tedious, but they could also be intentional choices, adding to the immersive quality.
Exactly. Pacing is subjective, after all. What one person finds slow, another might find captivating and atmospheric.
This brings up a good point about film criticism in general.
Yeah.
It's all about perspective, right? What's compelling to one person might not be to another, and that's okay. It's what makes art so interesting, open to interpretation.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to consider different viewpoints and form our own opinions based on our own experiences.
This deep dive is really highlighting how important critical thinking is. Looking beyond the surface, considering different interpretations, it's not just about summarizing the film, it's about engaging with its ideas, its themes, its strengths, and weaknesses.
Couldn't agree more. That's what makes this conversation so enriching. It's not just passively taking in information, it's actively exploring meaning.
Well said. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive into The Legend of Ochi, I want to come back to the film's core message about fear and understanding. We've touched on it throughout our conversation, but I'm curious to hear your final thoughts on how the film challenges us to approach the unknown with more curiosity and empathy.
That's a great way to end things. I think The Legend of Ochi is a powerful reminder that fear is natural, but it doesn't have to control us. We can choose curiosity over fear, understanding over demonization.
And that choice, as the film shows, can change everything. It can lead to connection and compassion instead of conflict and division.
Exactly. And it's a choice we face every day, not just with creatures like the Ochi, but with people from different backgrounds, different cultures, different beliefs.
This film is really giving us a lot to think about, isn't it? It's not just a fantasy adventure, it's a mirror, reflecting our capacity for both fear and love, ignorance, and understanding.
I think that's what makes it so compelling and relevant today. It's a story that speaks to our shared humanity, our struggles, and our potential for growth.
Well said. Before we jump into our final thoughts, let's acknowledge the craft that went into making this film. From the visuals to the performances, The Legend of Ochi shows the power of storytelling to transport and transform us.
Absolutely. It reminds us that art can be entertaining, it can challenge us, inspire us, and help us become more compassionate and understanding.
I'm feeling incredibly inspired after this deep dive, and I'm sure you are too. Let's take a moment to gather our thoughts and get ready for our final reflection. Are you ready to wrap things up?
Absolutely. I'm excited to hear your final thoughts and to share my own reflections on the film's message and how it can inspire change.
Great. Let's dive into our final thoughts and see what insights we can gain from this incredible journey into the Legend of Ochi. Okay, so we've really unpacked the Legend of Ochi, the characters, the themes, that incredible world they built. I gotta say, the more we talk about it, the more it seems like it's about way more than just a fantasy adventure, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. What sticks with me is that message about individual perspective.
Yeah.
Yuri, even surrounded by all that fear and prejudice, she chooses to see the Ochi differently, doesn't just accept what she's told. She questions, she observes, forms her own conclusions.
Yeah, and that's so important for all of us, right? To not just blindly accept things. Be critical thinkers, look for evidence, be open to different views. Makes me think about all the times people have challenged the status quo, spoken truth to power, even when it was risky.
Exactly. And the film shows that even just one person willing to see things differently, it can have a ripple effect, inspire others to question their own beliefs. It's hopeful, especially when it feels like there's so much division and fear out there.
It also makes you think about those who hold on to their fear, though. Those who refuse to see another perspective. Like Yuri's father, Maxim. He seems so trapped, so convinced he's right, that he can't even consider he might be wrong.
It's tragic, and I think the film handles it really well. Maxim isn't a villain, he's complex. He's trying to protect what he thinks is right in his own way. But the fear has blinded him, closed him off.
That blindness, like we said, can be so dangerous. Lead to conflict, violence, harmful stereotypes. Makes me think about all the times fear and ignorance have been used to justify awful things.
It's sobering, but important to think about. And I think the film, by showing us what Maxim's fear leads to, it's encouraging us to look at our own biases, our blind spots. Ask ourselves, is fear controlling me? Am I closed off to understanding?
Those are big questions, ones we all need to think about. But the film offers hope, too, right? Shows us it's possible to break free from that fear and prejudice. Choose curiosity and compassion instead.
Exactly. Yuri's journey proves that. She faces pushback, even ridicule, for seeing the Ochi differently. But she sticks to her belief that understanding is possible. And by doing that, she not only changes how she sees the world, she inspires others to do the same.
That's what makes this film so powerful, so relevant to us. It's not just an escape, it's a call to action. To be more courageous, more compassionate, more willing to challenge ourselves, and embrace the unknown.
You've really captured the essence of it. It's a story that stays with you, makes you think about your own beliefs and actions, and ultimately to try to be a better, more understanding person.
And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the Legend of Ochi. It's been an amazing journey exploring the characters, themes, that world they built. I'm feeling inspired and a little challenged too.
I feel the same. It's been great to dive into this with you, uncover all those layers of meaning. It's a film that'll stick with me for a while.
Before we go, one last thought for you all to ponder. If the Legend of Ochi is about fear and understanding, what are the Ochis in your own life? What do you fear? Who do you misunderstand? And how can you, like Yuri, approach those things with more curiosity and empathy? It's something to think about as we navigate this crazy world.
That's a powerful question to leave everyone with.
Yeah.
One we can all benefit from asking ourselves. By choosing curiosity and empathy, we open ourselves up to connection, understanding, and maybe a more compassionate and just world.
Beautifully said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking that understanding.